G'day everyone, welcome back to Fixit Fingers Woodworking. The last project, the tool cabinet, is serving its purpose. I've got a few more little bits and pieces to do, but as we said, the power tools are going to live on the pegboard once I get all of the hand tools onto the French cleats. But some of the power tools that I use most regularly, being the drill drivers and the nail gun, I'm actually going to make a station under here to hang them, and it's going to house not only the battery chargers for the Makitas, but also the battery chargers for the camera and the light as well, because they need to be accessed very frequently here. All going to be made out of completely rubbish, side of the road, scrap plywood, just like the last one, and we should have a bit of fun because I'm winging it. That are my plans, right there. We're going to do this on the fly, which is not really Fixit Fingers style, but we'll see how it turns out. Let's go. Right, so straight off the bat, every single piece of plywood is probably from a different place. They're all different thicknesses, and what I've done is marked out my biggest scraps with the dimensions, and that allowed me to go through, and whenever I needed a piece, try to find one that was going to give me the least amount of waste, so I could use these up effectively. The bottoms and sides were roughly 17 mils, so I used the actual drills themselves just to mark out where I wanted the center divider and the two edge bits to go. Then it was a matter of marking out the holes. I decided to mount them the right way up instead of upside down like some people do. This has given me a bit more variation, but I just like to be able to grab pistol grip those off the rack. So we've measured out the width of them, and the three drills came roughly to the same dimension, so I could do a practice cut on another piece of scrap. The nail gun though, it was a bit wider and needed to be a lot deeper. So that kind of dictated how deep my shelf needed to be. Once I had a nice fit for all of them, I transferred those marks onto my main blank and over to the inverted jigsaw. We were able to cut out those voids. I do like the inverted jigsaw for a lot of applications where I'm cutting to a line like this. It may be a tiny bit slower than using the jigsaw normally, but the visibility you get is far superior. And of course the best thing about this build is no one's ever going to see this, and it's all crap wood, so I can be dodgy as heck with these cuts and just very quickly clean them up with some sandpaper. No need to be fussy here at all. One of many test fits going on to make sure everything is sitting pretty and not going to fall out on me. And because I never use my router without the router table, here I am going in the completely wrong direction with a small round over bit. Just taking off those edges backwards. And the second test fit looking nice and pretty. Grabbing another conveniently sized piece of scrap for the top, I just trace that out. And hang on a second, what's that? More of that later. It's not actually set up yet, but it still functions as a straight edge. So Chopper Chris and I could rip that piece down over to the miter saw, cut it to the correct dimensions, router off with a round over bit the edge as well. And I've got a top now for the drill station. Time to cut out the three sides. Ooh, that was a bit close to the clamp, but it worked. Here are the two outside walls, and then for the middle divider, I had this lovely architectural design here, which I just decided to throw in. Save me some work. Now, there's probably not really any reason to pocket hole this together, but I do like them, and in my head they are stronger than just butt screwing things together. I'm not going to use any glue, and again, for reasons that amuse me, I like to alternate the pocket holes, particularly on the middle bits, but there was some method to the madness, particularly with that one in the middle, which you'll see when it comes to final assembly. So here's screwing the walls to the base, and this wasn't terribly tricky. So when we get to flipping it over and attaching the top, now you'll see why I've only put the pocket holes in the middle where I can reach them. So outside, nicely done, but inside, conveniently, these holes just allowed me to get the long driver bit in and lock everything down. There were two right in the middle though where the pocket holes wouldn't reach at all, so we reverted to the regular old countersinking and butt jointing. Now she's nearly done, and again for reasons that bemuse me now looking back on this, I decided to put a cleat on. I've just got cleats on the brain recently. This would have been much easier if I had just screwed a solid piece of wood on and then bolted it to the wall, but hey, who knows, one day I might change workshops and have to move this. So recycling some of the French cleats from the tool chest cabinet last week. And like usual, cutting the wall section that little bit smaller so there's an easy fit. I clamped the driver station to the tool cabinet, then used some chocks in order to have the pre-drilled cleat in the correct position, and this allowed me to transfer the marks onto the wall so that when I pulled it away, I could line things up with the hammer drill, level them off, drive in, smack in some plugs, and have my two small cleats mounted. This stopped me from having to remove the tool cabinet, and it weighs a ton, so that wasn't bloody well going to happen. Apart from securely fastening it to the brick wall, because this is going to take quite a bit of weight, those tools are heavy, I also put some screws into the tool cabinet itself, and then I could drive in some long screws into the brick wall, which gave it that nice rigidity. A final test fit, and there were two things that annoyed me. That older Makita drill didn't fit nicely, and also when I had long bits on there, they were touching the bricks, which is not fantastic. It will blunt them. So two little wedges solved the first problem, and screwing some very thin offcuts from my sandpaper testing to the back of the cleat solved the second problem. With that half done, it was time to move on to the charging station, and I'll spare you most of this as it's very similar construction. We got out the mystery straight edge, we ripped some bits off, we cross-cut some things over at the miter saw, we drove some pocket holes, and we forgot to film the most important part here of cutting off a 45 to allow cable management later. We switched over to the impact driver in order to get into this tight space and still drive those screws, and of course we didn't have a piece large enough, so just like last week we had to extend one of the boards with these sideways panel pocket screws, because that's what I do. Here was a nifty little trick that I worked out. I decided I wanted a shelf halfway-ish up and down on the charger station, but even with the impact driver, I couldn't get the drill bit in, so I took it off, marked out the holes by hand, then applied it, and was able to fit the small drilling device in to give me the two variable shelf pin holes that I needed, and that worked out quite nicely. Nearly done now, clamped it in, fed the cords through because without unscrewing it I wouldn't be able to do that otherwise. 4-way power board for the 4 things I need to charge. Couple of love taps into place, and this little thing I got from Audi on a whim. I thought that's going to come in handy one day. It's now sat in a drawer for 6 months, but today was its time to shine, and it was $10 very well spent because this one isn't taking any weight, so I didn't want to drill it into the bricks. I just put 6 screws into the tool cabinet directly, and that seems to have been more than sufficient. Running my cables through, plugging in the chargers for the camera and for the light. Quickly cut out a shelf to the appropriate dimensions, just 12mm scrap ply, which will hold some batteries. And I'm glad that the height I put in there gives me easy access without bashing my hand to put the batteries on the charger.
She's done! And what a load of crap it is. Honestly, that's probably the dodgiest thing I've made in a very long time. Yes, I was trying to use up scraps and cobbling things together, but the main reason and the main lesson I'm going to take away from this is I didn't have plans. And when you have something even sketched out properly and conceptualized properly, things tend to go a lot smoother, whereas this, the design changed 10 times and I was making stuff up as I went along. It took a lot longer than it should have. It was still fun, and it's of course functional for workshop furniture. It doesn't need to look particularly pretty. It will do for this week as well. That's it for now. I'll catch you on the next one. See ya. Out.